Yeah, my screen is visible, right?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome to Goa Mules of Meter. Good morning, all. Thanks for joining. I know today is a Sunday. Everyone busy with their own work and all, but still, yeah. Thank you so much for all who joined the session. Take your time and join the session. Okay. Today's topic is going to be configuring and integrating Jira and its webhook in Mule 4. It's a very interesting topic, and we have our speaker Ritika here. So before starting I'll dive into actual topic. So we'll introduce our Goa meetup leaders. So we have Gaurav, Vinay, and myself. And Gaurav, he is a senior architect at Capgemini Australia, and he is also MuleSoft mentor as well as Goa and Nagpur meetup leader. And we have Vinay here. So Vinay, you can introduce yourself to audience.
Thank you, Vandana. Yeah, hi everyone. So welcome to Goa Meetup, News of Meetup. So myself, Vinay, I'm having total 6+ years of experience in IT and Mule. I'm MuleSoft certified. And yeah, that's it from my end, Vandana. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Vinay. And myself is Vandana Gowda. I'm a senior software engineer at Jansa Technologies. And I'm also a MuleSoft mentor as well as a Goa meetup leader. So if you are interested to be like a speak in Goa MuleSoft meetup, please let me know either in a Slack or LinkedIn. I'm very active in LinkedIn, so you can just message me there. So we can happily host you. Okay. Thank you so much. And we have our speaker, Ritika, here. And yeah, Ritika, please introduce yourself to audience.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Hi,
Yeah,
everyone. I'm Ritika Saraya. I'm working as a digital engineering senior engineer at Entity Data. I have a total of 3.5 years of experience in MuleSoft, and I've been working on the technology all throughout those years. So I'm a MuleSoft certified developer. I'm looking forward to going ahead and presenting you the topic today. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you ever have any doubts related to the topic again.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ritika. So over to you. So you can share your screen and start the agenda. So let me stop.
I'll do that. Yeah.
I guess you are able to share your screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Please go ahead. If anyone have any doubts, please ping me in a chat so we can take it that. Okay. Okay. Ritika, you can start.
Yep. So to go over the agenda for today, we'll be discussing about Jira first of all. What Jira is, our simple ticketing tool, understanding how the Jira API works, connecting to it through our Anypoint Studio, our configuration, the connector configuration. We'll be discussing about creating webhooks in Jira and how to receive data through them and going ahead and using them further for our later operations. We'll be discussing on the creation of Jira tasks, subtasks, and the addition of watches to them, which is the very basic thing that we'll be needing if we are going ahead and integrating with Jira anytime soon. So we'll be having a walkthrough or a demo of all these things. So it shouldn't be as boring as as a normal lecture goes. And towards the end, we'll be taking up any Q&A that you guys have. So let's begin. The Jira introduction. If you guys have ever worked with Jira, we know that it's a simple ticketing tool, or whenever we have projects going on, we've got different sprints that we're working with. We are creating different tickets there. Jira has multiple options for us to create tasks or bugs or any improvement per se. So if you ever want to work with that, we'll need to be working on the integration of it as well. So now, as far as the formal introduction of Jira goes, it's a proprietary issue tracking tool developed by Atlassian, which allows you to track your bugs and helps you to track your project management. It's also a project management tool, so it will help you track your project through sprints as well. Now, for the developers, we can add new features to it by creating bugs, by creating Now, those custom fields, you can go ahead and have a look at the Jira API for that, and we can walk through the Jira API together today. Now, the prerequisites for today's session. We've got two very important prerequisites if you ever want to integrate with Jira. The first one being the admin access to your Atlassian account. Now, if you're doing a POC, you'll already have an admin access to your account. If you're working with a client Jira, you'll have to get access to it as an admin, or if they create a service account for you for your MuleSoft integration, you need to ask them for admin access if you want to create a API token that's mentioned in the second step. So the second step we have here is creation of an API token. This API or an access token will help you connect to Jira by creating a Jira connector configuration in your Anypoint Studio. Next, the option we'll be choosing is basic authentication. We'll be having three things mentioned there. The email ID for the admin, basically, for whoever has created the API token. The second thing we'll have is the API token itself. And the third thing would be your base URI. The base URI, you should be able to look at it when you log into your Jira in your browser URL itself. We'll have a walkthrough and have a working demo so that I can explain you how to fetch all of these things as well. Now, the third thing you will need is the Jira issue type ID. For every project in your Jira, for every project in your Jira, if you want to create a bug, let's say, it will have an issue type ID that will be used to create an issue through your integration. Now, if you're working on a single project and later you want to jump onto a different project, you'll have to fetch that ID again, because for every project, it will be a different ID. You need to make sure that you're not trying to create a Jira issue in a different project than from where you have picked the issue type ID as well. That is a major, let's say, error that I've seen occurring. So we'll make sure that never happens. I have a few screenshots pasted over here. I'll go through all the theory first and we can do the demo towards the end. So if in case you do not understand anything that's happening in the theory part, I'll make sure you get that in the demo. And if you don't, please feel free to drop a comment in the chat section. Now, for fetching the API token, you will need to go into your settings. Again, you need to have admin access to fetch, to go to the security section. So under the settings, going to the security tab, you should be able to see a heading API tokens. Under the API token, it's a 2-click process. You need to create an API token, add a name to it, and a token will be generated for you. Now, those tokens, it's a very important thing that you make sure that you copy that token and save it somewhere for your future use, because once it is created, you cannot go ahead and access it again. You'll need to revoke that token and create a new token for you if you have not saved it somewhere. The next thing, fetching the issue IDs. Now, these are the two steps I mentioned you about, API tokens and the issue type IDs. These issue type IDs are a very necessary step, and for every project, they're going to be different. We had a create meta endpoint on the Jira API, which let you fetch the details for every project all at once. So it would just simply go ahead and do a search on your complete Jira org and provide you the data for all the project all at once. It was a heavy load request, so they've deprecated it ever since. But they've created a new thing for you, which will be fetching issue type IDs based on project ID itself. So you'll need to enter the project ID in your URL and your username, which will be your email ID, along with the API token as a basic auth to fetch or to run this curl. When you run this curl, I'll be also showing you, demonstrating you how to do this in Postman as well. But when you run this curl, you'll be having a list of all the issues that are present in your project and their corresponding IDs, which we'll be using later on in our project. For creating the Jira webhook, this is our new step. For creating the Jira webhook, we'll be working with the Jira automation section of your project. So under the project settings, we have an automation section, and we'll be creating a rule set for us. That rule set will help us determine what requests we need to send, what actions we need to take, and what are the triggers that we'll be operating with. Now, Jira is capable of actually running a lot more things than we expect. So, when you create a new trigger and the actions that come underneath it, we can send over emails, we can send over Slack messages, we can create new tickets with the rule set itself. We can also go ahead and integrate multiple other systems in Jira itself when you're creating a rule set. So, creating a rule set is a major step that we'll be encountering today. Now, for the step one, to create a Jira webhook, we'll be going on to the project settings as I mentioned. And under the automation section, we'll be creating a rule set for us. For the second step, we'll be selecting a trigger. A trigger is something that will go ahead and act like a webhook sort of situation for us. So whenever you're creating a webhook, you need a trigger for it. Now that could be a field value changed. In one of my project while I was working with Jira, the client had specifically requested for us to track changes when the status of an issue changed. Everything in Jira is an issue. An issue is of different types, which can be improvement, bug, task, or whatever. So we'll be using the generic term issue as of now. The issue status changing was our trigger. So I've pasted a screenshot here which shows you we'll be monitoring a change on the status field. The change type can be any change on that field, and it will be working for an edit issue. Whenever you create a new issue on Jira, it already has a status assigned to it, which is to do. So you cannot specifically track it when you're creating a Jira task or a Jira issue. So we're working with an edit issue here. As for the third step, when we have a rule created, we'll be saving it, a name to it, and basically adding a action. Now, action is something which is of multiple types and can be done through multiple ways. For now, we'll be discussing a send web request, which will act as a webhook to our experience API or the demo POC API, that whatever you want to develop. We'll be adding the URL there. Other than that, we can also have an action there for sending a Slack message. We'll need to add the Slack webhook URL for that. If you are integrating with Slack the mean simple way, we all know that we need to create a webhook URL in Slack, correct? So we'll be adding that webhook URL of Slack in the action type if you ever want to do that action as well. So for now, we'll be using the send web request, and for that, we'll require a request URL, the Cloud Hub request URL. Let's make sure it's a Cloud Hub request URL. I've seen people trying the local host URLs, it won't work. Jira does not work if you're trying to integrate with your local host. You need to have your application deployed in Cloud Hub for it to work. We'll be designing a request body for our webhook as well, and creating key value pairs that are necessary for our integration. Now, these key value pairs can vary from time to time, from project to project, from whatever you need to get the issue access. So you can alter it according to your usage later on. As a note, in the Jira webhook or the Jira rule set, we also have an option to add headers. So if your API is using client ID enforcement or the basic auth policy, we can also have headers mentioned in the Jira webhook so that your API is secure as well, while at the same time Jira is accessing it throughout. Now, send web request, As I had mentioned in the third step, we have a screenshot here that will properly show you what is necessary. So on the top, we can see the web request URL. This web request URL will be a URL to your Cloud Hub API. The second thing we have is headers. Now these headers are optional. If you're creating a POC, obviously you won't have anything to enter here, correct? If you're creating a client project, you'll need to have the API secured, and in that situation, you can add your client ID and client secret here in the headers itself. You can also hide them so that no one can, with easy access, can go ahead and access it from your rule set. We'll be defining an HTTP method. The HTTP method is post get, depending on whatever you have defined in your YAML for your API. This HTTP method will be added here. The last thing we have is web request body. Now this web request body can be of multiple types. We'll be going over those options when we are on to the demo part. But for now, we have added an option for custom data. In Jira, we can have a specific set of fields if added, if we need them. So I've added 5 key value pairs here, the most important ones. We've added an issue type, an issue key, a subtask, if there's any, it will come on the subtask ID will be tracked. If there's nothing, we'll be having a null value or an empty string coming to us. The fourth is updated date, whenever that issue was updated. Since we're tracking an edit issue, we'll need the updated date as well. So we have the update date here. And the last thing we have is status. To create a Jira webhook, we have the fourth, which will be adding a name to your automation step or the rule set that you've created. And the fifth step is going ahead and running it through your endpoint platform and checking if everything is working or not. To create a Jira issue or to go ahead and jump onto your endpoint studio, the very first thing is importing a dependency from your exchange. So go ahead, connect to your exchange and import the Jira connector dependency, the latest version, onto your endpoint studio project. Once you've done that, we'll be creating the Jira connector configuration as well. Now that the dependency has been added, we'll be fetching the details for an issue type ID. We already had the saw how to fetch an issue type ID. We have the curl in our PPT as well. I think Vandana would be forwarding you all of you in that in your emails. So when you run that curl, you'll have the issue type ID. That issue type ID will be used here in your Anypoint Studio in the request body when you're creating a task, a subtask, or an directly, let's say, an issue. To create the Jira connector configuration, we'll be choosing the option basic auth and adding 3 things there as I discussed earlier. We'll be having our email ID or the username. The second thing we have is our API token that we created earlier. And the third thing is the base URI, which you can easily fetch in your browser URL when you log into your Jira org. On running the MuleSoft application, we should be able to see an issue created as long as we have a correct request body with all the issue key value pairs maintained properly. We'll be creating a subtask associated to the very first ticket or the issue we create. And the third thing, we'll be adding a watcher to it. In Jira, the Jira API does not allow you to add multiple watchers all at once. It's an ongoing issue from a very long time. So if you want to add multiple watchers to your Jira issue, you'll need to have a for each block in place. So you can have an array of strings of an array of user IDs that you want to add as a watcher and run it through your for each to add watchers one by one. Now, coming to the demo part, let's jump on to the prerequisite section and we can discuss on how we'll be going through the demo. I'll be showing you how you can go ahead and fetch or how you can go ahead and fetch your API token. So under your Atlassian settings, when you go to the security section, if you're working with your own personal account, you should be able to see an option to change your password as well. If you're on your client software, you wouldn't be able to see this if they've added multiple authentication methods there or security. So when you scroll down, you should be able to see a section called API tokens. When we click on the create and manage API tokens, right now I've got two API tokens. So the last API token that I created was an year earlier, and I did not remember the API token. Now, since I did not remember it and have it saved somewhere, I had to create a new one for this demo. So please be aware that you need to go ahead and save it once and for all when it is created. You won't be able to access it later on at all. Now the two-click process goes like this. We need to click on the create API token. We need to have a name assigned to it. So let's do a new token, and we can click on the create option and a new token will be created for us. This API token, you can later use it in your authentication when you're creating a connector configuration. Since I already have one for my demo, I'll be going ahead and revoking it. We have the revoke option here, and directly we can go ahead and cancel it. The second thing, which is very important, is fetching the issue type IDs. So when we jump into the Jira API documentation, you'll scroll down. This is the endpoint that I was referring to you. This get create issue metadata was used earlier on, and it used to fetch all the details in your organization all at once, and it was a very heavy operation. So Jira has ever since deprecated it and dissolved it into two different requests for you. We have the very first one, which will help you in getting the Jira issue type IDs, and we have another one to fetch the fields associated with your project. Now the first one that we have here, we'll go ahead onto the curl section and we can copy this. Moving on to our postman, we have a fetch metadata option here. I've added my organization details, base URI that was needed. Okay, actually let me go ahead and show you how you can get your base URI. So when you log into your Jira organization, you'll be able to see a base URI right here. So anything before /Jira, the /Jira URI parameter is your base URI. You can copy this. You'll need to have it pasted right over here. And then of course we have the curl request as it is. I've added my project key here. I have a project that I'm using here. So under my project sections, this is the one I'm working with. I have the project key as PAT. I'm fetching the project details or the issue type IDs for the project BAT. When you send a request under the authorization section, now the API token here, under the authorization section, you'll need to have a basic auth in place. Now this is the basic auth that I'm working with. I have my email ID and my token that I'm using, and add request to Jira. Now in this specific project, I've got total 6 issue types that I can use. The first one is an epic. The second one we have is an improvement. Then we have a task, a subtask, and a new feature, and then a bug. Whatever you want to create, whatever type of issue you want to create, you need to have the ID in hand for that. Now this is the issue type bug. We'll be working with tasks and subtask today. So the Jira issue type ID for subtask is 10008. For task it's 10007. For your Jira org, for your Jira project, you'll have a different ID. So this request on your PC as well using your base URI. So get this ID and we'll be moving on to the next step. We have the API token with us, we have the ad established, we have the Jira issue type ID as well. Now, on to the step where we are creating a Jira webhook. Under your project, whatever you, there should be a project settings option. If you have admin access, you should be able to see this. If you only have developer access under your client account, you might not be able to see this. So again, an admin access is really necessary. On your project settings, you need to move on to automation tab. Once you are on the automation tab, you'll need to go ahead and create a rule. I already have a rule in place for today's testing. I'll show you how you create a new rule as well. So you'll need to click on create a rule. The very first thing is the addition of a trigger. Jira allows you to add multiple options here. It allows you with multiple options to be added here. So we can have a version deleted, a issue comment deleted. We can have a field value changed, an issue commented, issue created. We can even have issue assigned as well. So whenever you create an issue, it does not have an assignee to it, correct? If you're creating it through your UI. If you want to, whenever it's assigned to someone, if you want that to be a trigger, you can even click on this issue assigned and you can choose simply the option that whenever a new issue has been created and you add a new assignee to it, this webhook should run at that specific point of time. We'll be moving on with the field value changed. So in this demo, we are working with the status, correct? So we'll have, now to move on to the fields, basically, we have a total of 50 fields that we can use as a trigger, correct? Status is a very important one. So we have status working here. If you want to add other fields here to this section as well, you can add them. We have a reporter, we have a priority. If your issue priority gets changed, you want to get this triggered, be it, go ahead and add that here. We'll be working with status for now. So any changes to the field value status, this webhook should run. For what? For every edit issue. You can have it created for a create issue, for a transition issue, for an assign issue. Create issue, of course, whenever an issue is created, your webhook would run. Second thing, edit issue, whenever your status is updated by someone, your rule set would run. Third thing, your transition issue. Now, to understand transition issue, we have in, if you're working in a project, we have multiple sprints, correct? Now, in every sprint, whenever a task is not accomplished or an issue is not completed, we go ahead and drag and drop it to the another sprint, correct? Now, when you drag and drop it to another sprint, that is called a transition issue. We're moving it from one section to another, and the issue is transitioning basically. So, whenever someone transitions that issue, if you want to run your rule set, then you click on the transition issue. Assign issue, of course, whenever it is assigned to someone. Clicking on the edit issue and on to the next section, we'll need to create a new action. We have multiple options here as well. So you can add an if condition, you can add a for each condition. If condition, let's say you only want to run this for the Jira issues that are currently open and not closed, or whose status is not marked as completed, who are in preparation section or in the development section. If you only want to run those, you can add an if condition here. For now, we'll be only working with all the issues basically. If there's an update in the status, we'll be running that. Adding an action. As I had mentioned, we have multiple options in the Jira action type. So you can even you can create a branch in GitHub. So which is a pretty good one. So if you're working in sprints, this is a very good option. If you're transitioning to a new stage of your sprint from your let's say requirement gathering to development, you can have a trigger in place and create a branch for development right from your Jira itself. We can create an issue, we can edit it, we can send emails, transition the issue from one sprint to another. We can even clone an issue, or my favorite, we can send a Slack message. So the error handling part or anything, if there's a lot of things you can handle in Jira itself. So learning how to create rule sets is really important. For now, we'll be doing a send web request. Now under the send web request section, we have a web request URL, the very first thing that is here. Here we'll be adding our Cloud Hub API URL along with the endpoint that we have created. The one I'm working with is /webhook, so I've added that here as well. I do not have any security on this API added as of now, so I do not need to add any headers here. If you want to add any header here, you can simply go ahead and add your client ID, add the value here, hide it. Another one, client secret, add the value here and hide it. For the HTTP method, whatever YAML you have created, select the HTTP method here. Under the web request body, it's empty as of now. We have three options. We have issue data, automation format. Now, Jira has its own automation format of sending a request body. There are a limited set of fields there that they consider necessary for a web request. So they've added that in this subsection. So if you click on this, you'll have an automation formatted issue details sent over to you directly. If you click on the last one, which is Jira format, it will send you a complete list of all the fields, all the necessary details on an issue, basically a complete result body for a GET request on your Jira issue. What we'll be using today is custom data. Now, custom data, if you want to have a JSON object in place, you'll need to create a JSON object here. You can have your multiple IDs here. So let's say we want an issue ID sent over to us in your request body. We can add the issue ID directly here. As for the values part, whatever you want to add as a value here, you can simply go ahead and refer it with the dot operator. What you can refer, you can click on this directly. And under the smart values section, under the issue, whatever you want to the fields that you are working with, let's say you wanted the description. So under the issue description, this is the placeholder you want to be using. So double curly braces issue.description is what you need to be using right here. So if we, instead of ID, so what will be the placeholder for ID? It will be simply issue.id. For description, you can have a description key and add its value, whatever we've copied right here. These are the two things that we need. If you want multiple options, as we had mentioned or discussed over on the PPT, the 5 key value pairs that we had to be working with, you can go ahead and add those here as well. So issue ID, the subtask updated as status. Simply do an issue dot whatever the field you want to refer. Once that's done, you can go ahead and click on the next option. On the next option, you can go ahead and directly turn on your rule. These are the only 2 steps that are necessary for running a webhook for now. If you want to add another component like the if condition, or if you want to add another action like send a Slack message as soon as this web request is run, or send an email, you can add another action on top of this. This flow actually resembles the Salesforce flow if you have worked with it. So a simple click operation basically. We can go ahead and turn on the rule. It will make you add a name to whatever your rule you have developed is. So let's say new test rule. You can go ahead and click on who can edit this role. If you want only, if you want it to be only restricted to you, you can go ahead and click on private. If you want it to specific admins, you'll need to add the admin users here. Okay, so whatever the list is on your system, you can add one of those. We're setting it to private since it's a POC, and we can go ahead and click on the turn on rule. Now I do not want this saved, so I'm clicking on discard. I'll show you what I've created for this testing purpose right now. Under the when section, we already went through how we can add a field if we want an issue to be tracked on an edit. We're doing it on a comment. Okay, so as a trigger, I've added whenever a new comment is added, all the comments on all the comments on all the issues, whenever a new comment is added, I want to run this rule set. When it is done, I'm sending a web request to my Cloud Hub API URL, and I have a method post. I have custom data selected. I've added an additional key value pair here. This key value pair is, so whenever I'm adding a comment, I want to go ahead and see what has been added, correct? So I've added a new key value pair comment here. You can track it directly. Issue.comment. Issue.comment will help you track all the comments that have been added to your issue ever in the history. It's actually sorted in an ascending order, so the earlier it was created, it's on the top of the list. And then of course it's a comma separated list of all the comments that are added from ascending to descending order based on the added date. You can add headers. I haven't added any. And you can actually go ahead and under this subsection see how you want to add different fields as well. So if you want to track your web responses, if this web request ran or not, if you want to see or track those things as well, you can add a web response dot status here as well. Once it's activated, your rule set is activated, you can go on to the audit log. Audit log will allow you to see how many times or how many changes have happened on your rule set. So these are the list of changes that have happened on my rule set. So I was in the beginning when it was created, we had a config change, we ran this, we had a success operation. If it fails, you should be able to see a failure here as well. And you can track it using the show more option. It will show you what happened, why it failed, basically the issue that it worked on as well. So you can basically track everything on your Jira rule set right in this section. We're returning to the rules section. We'll need to go ahead and test this. So we'll quickly go ahead on our project, and under all issues, for now, remember I've created it for all the issues. Even if it's closed, even if it's completed, it should run. So I'll go ahead on this one and I'll add a comment, new rule set test. I'll save this. A new comment was added. Our webhook should ideally have ran. If it ran, I've actually gone ahead and logged that payload that we'll be receiving from Jira. So I'll show you under my log section. Yeah, so this webhook got triggered for BAT13 issue. We have our comment new rule set test added over there. The updated date was this if you want to track anything in your API. Now I'll go ahead and I'll show you the project that I've created as well. Until it opens, we can see how that audit log works as well. So just now the action that we ran. Under the Mule testing webhook, under the audit log section, we have a new webhook that ran just now at 10:46. We have its success. We have the operation ran on BAT13 correct, and we have a send web request action that happened successfully. I'm opening up the Anypoint Studio to show you what I had created for the webhook. So we'll let it load. The dependencies should come in. For the webhook, I had created a simple flow. I've converted the incoming payload in JSON and simply logged it in our API for creating an issue. On to the important part. I've created a request body to Jira. Now this specific request body should come as is. So the key value pairs, these are already decided by Jira. So if you'll go on to the Jira API documentation, you should be able to see this directly there. I've added some additional fields here for my convenience. If you want to add more, you can do that as well. If you want, let's say a new comment, as soon as it is created, you can add a comment section here as well, a comment key value pair. Assignee. I already have an assignee on my properties file which we'll be using here. I have a summary which will be fetched from the payload, a description which will be fetched from the payload as well. We have an issue type. Now this is the issue type ID that I was referring to. We'll be creating a task. So I have the issue type ID for a task added here. I have the project mentioned. We're working with BAT. So BAT is the value correctly mentioned here in the YAML file. I have a reporter ID here as well. I can go ahead and refer it through the payload. I do not have anything in the payload. I'm referring it through my YAML file directly. Under the create issue section, we'll go over the connector configuration here as well. So on the Jira connector configuration, I don't think resolve the metadata. Okay, let's wait until this gets resolved. I have a logger in place which will tell you issue got created. So issue got with the ID. I've logged the key, the issue key here, adding a watcher to the issue that we have created earlier. So under the add watcher subflow, we have a payload running for that as well. We have the issue key which I want to add a watcher to, and I have a watcher key value pair. This will be the user ID for your or whatever user you want to add as a watcher. Able to see it under your pro section of G is a very long alphanumeric string. That alphanumeric string is what you want to be added here. You can use the names. You cannot add someone's alias here, only the Jira ID. So in the add watcher connector, we are adding the issue.key, we are adding the watcher here, we are logging that the watcher was correctly added. We are creating a subtask next. The subtask will be associated with the very first task that we created during the beginning. So there are two common components added here additionally. The first one being parent. The parent key value pair will have issue key of the very first issue that got created. The second thing we have here is issue type. These are the two changes for the very first payload that we created. So the issue type will now change to subtask, and we'll need to add a subtask issue type ID here. The one that we fetched from here. So 10008 is what's mentioned correctly in your YAML here. So I think the metadata isn't resolving. I can show you what I've added in the basic auth for Jira connector itself. We have a user. The username I've encrypted, it's my email ID associated with the Jira account. The API token, the token I created earlier on for this demo, is what's mentioned here. The base URI I've already mentioned, you can get it from your browser URL. The project ID, BAT, the task assignee, and the reporter. Both of these IDs are mine as of now. So I've added encrypted it here, the alphanumeric key, and I've added it here. The issue key is what we fetched from the very first curl that we ran. We'll go ahead and test this now. I've deployed our Cloud Hub. For our payload, our summary will be nothing but your Jira name, issue name that you're creating. So I've added Jira flow running, and I've added a description, a test description for whatever the test you're creating. Okay, we'll be running this. Okay, so it executed successfully. We've created a new task here called BAT18. I'll go ahead on to the logs real fast, and we can check what got created and the logs that were generated. Now the issue got successfully created. This was the task that was created. The second thing was adding a watcher to your issue, which was BAT17. Then associated to this task, we've created a subtask called BAT18 onto your projects as well. If you'll jump on to all issues, you should be able to see the new task and subtasks that were added. Now this Jira flow running in demo, this is the one that we created. We've added a watcher to it, which is me. So I'm watching on this issue. I've added a description to it correctly as well. We have an assignee and a reporter to this issue. We have a subtask created. Now under this task itself, you should be able to see a subtask section. If you do not have any subtask associated with your task, this section will be empty or you won't see it altogether. We have our subtask created, and here it is. So a simple subtask that we created with all the assignees, the priority being medium, and we can see the parent is BAT17. Now this is it for the demo. We can actually go ahead and do one thing. Let's add a comment here and see if the webhook runs, okay? I'll do something with the emojis. Let's do a save operation here. We have the comment added. This should come on to our Cloud Hub API directly as well. Yeah. So right here for BAT18, I've added a new comment which just looks good. The status was to do, the updated date was as mentioned, and there was no subtask associated because this issue is already a subtask, correct? So this came in as empty. Now I'll go ahead and present my screen again. This was it for the demo. If you guys have any questions, please drop it in your comment section. And as for the references, I've actually already published a blog for this. If you want to go ahead and follow a step-by-step how and what we did in this added for my blog here, and I've added the Jira API documentation for you to go through. If you want to connect it through a request component instead of a connector,
Yeah, we have one question.
Mhm.
Can we assign multiple assigned to Jira issue?
So, assigning multiple assignees to an Jira issue is possible, of course. You can add multiple IDs there. You can go through the Jira API documentation as I mentioned, and it should be mentioned how you can add it. So, it should be an array of strings. Your issue ID, the assignee IDs should be added in an array of strings, and you'll be able to do it. Yes, Jira supports it. Yeah.
I hope you clear, right, Satya? Surya is asking, can you provide the summary ones?
Okay, the summary for the session. Sure, Surya. So, the very first thing we did was learning about how Jira works. So, Jira is your issue tracking tool. If you want to create new issues there, if you're already working on a project, you want to edit anything there, you can work on those issues. You can assign those temps to yourselves or to anyone else. The second thing we learned about was the Jira API, how we can fetch the Jira issue type IDs from there. We also have multiple options there. If you want to connect through a request component instead of the Jira connector that we used, we have curls mentioned over there directly. The Jira API documentation is pretty good. So you should be able to see how that works directly. Then what we did was create a webhook. A webhook is nothing but called a rule set under the automation section in Jira. So you'll have if you'll have the admin access under the project settings section, under the automation tab, you'll be able to see how you can go ahead and create a rule set. Under the rule set, you need to define a trigger and an action. Once that's done, it should be correctly working. Your request URL under the send web request should be your Cloud Hub hosted API URL. It cannot be your local host, it would not run. The next thing we did was create a Mule app for creating an Jira task, creating its associated subtask, and adding a watcher to it. You can add multiple watchers through for each. It cannot be added all at once. Jira does not allow it as of now, so you'll need to have a for each in place to run that. I think that was pretty much it what we discussed. Surya, let me know if you want to discuss about something in detail as well. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Surya. And I provided Ritika's Medium blog link also. So please follow her blog so for the
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
If anyone
I've
have
done
any
this.
questions,
I think they're good. So I've created this blog actually a year earlier, and now that I've created a POC for you guys, I've gone ahead and followed the blog only. So the blog should work correctly for you guys. It's up to date and it's still working and it's a working blog. So you should be good on that.
yeah. Thank you, Ritika. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
much,
the
Vandana.
presentation and you explained it very well actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vandana.
Yeah. So I guess no more questions. So we can wrap up this session. Um, 1 minute, someone else. Yeah. No more question, I guess. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ritika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ritika. Thank you.
Bye, guys.